Westport, Connecticut sparkled under the May sunshine, as if nature itself was celebrating the wedding of the year. Robert Blackwood's mansion overlooking Long Island Sound had been transformed into a wonderland of exotic flowers, crystal decorations, and tasteful elegance that reflected his status as one of New England's most successful real estate developers. At 52, Robert maintained the distinguished appearance of a man who commanded boardrooms with quiet authority, salt and pepper hair perfectly styled, custom Italian suit fitting his tall frame impeccably, and steel blue eyes that rarely revealed emotion. Those closest to him knew those eyes had once sparkled with joy, before tragedy had dimmed them 15 years ago. Robert adjusted his cufflinks in the master suite mirror, trying to quiet the voice in his head that whispered, "This day felt wrong somehow." "Mr. Blackwood, the first guests are arriving," announced Gerald, his longtime butler and confidant. "Thank you, Gerald. I'll be down shortly." Robert's voice carried the practiced smoothness that had become his trademark since rebuilding his life. When photographers asked about his remarkable business recovery after personal devastation, he always offered the same response: "Life moves forward, and so must we." But alone in his room, Robert allowed himself a moment of reflection. The antique silver picture frame on his dresser held the last family photo taken before everything changed. Robert, his beloved wife Eleanor, and their 6-year-old daughter Sophia, all smiling on the deck of their sailboat. Eleanor had been gone for 16 years now, taken by an aggressive illness that had consumed her in months. And Sophia, his precious Sophia, had vanished during a charity event the following year, disappearing without a trace, despite nationwide searches, private investigators, and rewards that had grown to millions. For years, Robert had appeared on television, pleading for information. The case had gripped the nation briefly before fading from headlines, though never from Robert's heart. He ran his finger across Sophia's smile in the photograph. "I'm sorry, sweetheart," he whispered. "I never stopped looking." The soft knock at his door pulled him back to the present. "Robert, everyone's waiting." Catherine Daniels entered, resplendent in a designer champagne-colored gown that complemented her auburn hair and emerald eyes. At 45, she carried herself with the poise of someone accustomed to society's spotlight. Her charity foundation supporting children's education had earned her accolades and admiration in the community. More importantly to the gossip columns, it had brought her into Robert's orbit 3 years ago during a fundraiser. Their courtship had been the subject of speculation and interest, the grieving tycoon and the compassionate philanthropist finding each other after their individual struggles. What few knew was that Catherine had also experienced loss. She spoke occasionally of a daughter who had died in a house fire, while Catherine was traveling for humanitarian work. That shared understanding of parental grief had forged their initial connection. "You look beautiful," Robert said, taking her hands. Catherine smiled warmly. "And you look worried. Second thoughts?" Robert shook his head. "Just memories. They seem closer on days like this." Catherine's eyes softened with understanding. "Eleanor would want you to be happy, Robert. And so would Sophia." At the mention of his daughter's name, Robert felt the familiar tightness in his chest. Catherine was the only person who could mention Sophia without him flinching. "I know," he said, kissing her forehead. "Let's not keep everyone waiting." Downstairs, the mansion hummed with activity. 200 guests mingled in the grand hall. Business associates, politicians, celebrities, and the upper echelon of East Coast society. Security guards with earpieces monitored the grounds, while valets parked a procession of luxury vehicles. Outside the gates, reporters and photographers jostled for position, hoping to capture glimpses of the exclusive event. "Quite the spectacle," remarked Thomas Wells, Robert's attorney and oldest friend, as they watched from a side entrance. "Catherine certainly knows how to create an occasion." Robert nodded. "She wanted something memorable." "Speaking of memorable," Thomas lowered his voice, "I finalized those changes to your will yesterday. Everything's set as you requested." Robert had updated his estate planning to include Catherine, though he'd maintained substantial trusts for missing Sophia that would convert to charitable foundations on what would have been her 30th birthday. He could never bring himself to declare her legally dead, despite the recommendations of advisors through the years. "Thank you, Tom. I appreciate your discretion." Thomas clasped his shoulder. "I'm happy for you, Rob, really." As guests took their seats in the garden where the ceremony would take place, Catherine retreated to prepare with her bridesmaids. Robert greeted guests mechanically, his public persona firmly in place. Several miles away, in the struggling neighborhood of Bridgeport, 16-year-old Jessica Jessie Torres paced nervously in her cramped bedroom, clutching a worn backpack and a wrinkled invitation she'd lifted from a catering employee's clipboard. The small apartment she shared with her grandmother was quiet. Abuela was working her second shift at the hospital. On Jessie's bed lay a neatly folded dress, the nicest one she owned, though it was clearly second-hand. Her dark eyes kept returning to a silver necklace and handwritten note on her nightstand. The note, written in careful lettering, read, "If anything happens to me, find Robert Blackwood, show him this. I think he's my real father." The necklace was unlike anything Jessie had ever seen. Delicate silver with an unusual pendant and tiny engraved initials inside that Jessie could barely make out. EB to SB, Eleanor Blackwood to Sophia Blackwood, though Jessie didn't know that yet. Jessie had promised her friend Lily that she would deliver these items if Lily didn't return from confronting the woman who had raised her. The woman Lily had recently discovered wasn't her mother at all. When Lily had failed to return to their meeting spot 3 days ago, Jessie had begun planning. If Lily couldn't reach Robert Blackwood, then Jessie would do it for her. She checked the bus schedule one last time. The route would take her within a mile of the Blackwood estate, and she'd have to walk the rest. What she would do when she arrived, she wasn't entirely sure. But Lily had been the only person who'd befriended Jessie when she transferred to Westport Academy on a scholarship, despite the obvious social divide between them. Lily Bennett, with her quiet demeanor and kind eyes, had shared lunches and secrets with Jessie for 2 years. Now Lily needed her, and Jessie wouldn't let her down. "I'm coming, Lily," Jessie whispered, tucking the necklace carefully into her pocket. As she changed into the dress, she rehearsed what she would say when she faced Robert Blackwood. She had no idea that her actions would soon unravel 15 years of deception and change multiple lives forever. The ceremony began with the precise timing and flawless execution that characterized all of Robert Blackwood's affairs. String quartet music floated through the air as guests settled into white chairs adorned with orchid arrangements. Minister James Parker, a longtime family friend, stood ready at an altar decorated with cascading white roses and blue hydrangeas, Eleanor's favorites, a detail Catherine had thoughtfully included. Robert took his place at the front, Thomas at his side as best man. The bridal march began, and Catherine appeared at the garden entrance, a vision in her custom Vera Wang gown. A collective murmur of appreciation rippled through the gathering. Robert felt his breath catch, not just at Catherine's beauty, but at the significance of this moment. He was officially closing one chapter of his life and beginning another. As Catherine glided toward him, her smile radiant, Robert allowed himself to feel genuine happiness. Perhaps this was what healing looked like after all these years. Minister Parker began the ceremony with warm words about new beginnings and second chances. "We are gathered here today to celebrate the union of two remarkable souls who have found in each other the strength to embrace life again." Jessie Torres had never felt more out of place than she did now, slipping through a side entrance to the Blackwood estate, her heart pounding so loudly she was certain the security guards would hear it. She had taken the bus as planned, then walked the final stretch, her simple dress already wilting in the late spring humidity. Her plan, if you could call it that, had been to find some way to speak privately with Robert Blackwood. But as she rounded the garden hedge, she realized she had arrived in the middle of the wedding ceremony itself. Hundreds of elegantly dressed guests were focused on the couple at the altar. Jessie froze, suddenly aware of how impossible her task seemed. A server carrying a tray of champagne flutes noticed her and frowned, clearly recognizing she didn't belong. "Excuse me, miss," he began. But Jessie was already moving, slipping between guests at the back of the seating area, her eyes fixed on the tall man at the altar. She recognized Robert Blackwood from the newspaper articles she had researched, and the woman beside him, Jessie's heart nearly stopped. It was her. The same woman from the photos Lily had shown her. The woman Lily had gone to confront. Catherine Daniels. The realization hit Jessie like a physical blow. Catherine Daniels was marrying Robert Blackwood, the man Lily believed was her real father. Everything suddenly made horrible sense. If Lily was right, if she was really Sophia Blackwood, Then Catherine had been hiding her from her father for years, and now Catherine was about to marry him. The absolute audacity of it made Jesse's blood boil. Minister Parker's voice carried across the garden. If anyone can show just cause why this couple cannot lawfully be joined together in matrimony, let them speak now or forever hold their peace. The traditional line, rarely challenged in real life, hung in the air for a ceremonial moment. Jessie felt something inside her snap. Without consciously deciding to move, she found herself pushing forward through the rows of seated guests, ignoring their startled expressions and indignant whispers. "Wait!" The word tore from her throat, louder than she'd intended. The string quartet faltered. 200 heads turned in unison. Security guards began moving toward her. "You can't marry her." Jessie pointed directly at Catherine, her hand shaking but her voice growing stronger. "She's been hiding your daughter from you." The words landed like a bomb in the pristine garden. Robert stared at the disheveled teenager, his face a mask of confusion. Catherine's expression shifted from shock to something darker before she composed herself. "Security," she called calmly. "This poor girl is clearly confused." "I'm not confused." Jessie reached into her pocket and pulled out the silver necklace, holding it up so it caught the sunlight. "My friend Lily has been living with her for years," she continued, gesturing toward Catherine. "Lily always felt something was wrong. She found documents recently, started asking questions. She told me she thought her real name wasn't Lily Bennett at all. She said—" Jessie's voice broke, but she forced herself to continue, her eyes locked with Robert's. "She said she thought her name was Sophia Blackwood." A collective gasp rose from the guests. Robert had gone completely pale, his eyes fixed on the necklace dangling from Jessie's fingers. "Where did you get that?" he asked, his voice barely audible. Before Jessie could answer, Catherine stepped forward. "Robert, darling, don't let this intrusion upset you. This is clearly some kind of terrible prank or extortion attempt." Her voice was steady, but Jessie noticed her hands were trembling slightly. "The necklace was Lily's," Jessie said, directing her words to Robert. "She gave it to me before she went to confront Ms. Daniels 3 days ago. She said if anything happened to her, I should bring it to you." Robert slowly walked down from the altar, moving as if in a trance. 2 security guards had reached Jessie, each taking one of her arms, but Robert waved them away. "Let her go." He reached for the necklace, and Jessie surrendered it to him. His fingers traced the intricate silver work, then turned it over to examine the clasp. When he saw the engraved initials, his composure finally broke. "This was Eleanor's," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I had it made for her when Sophia was born. She always wore it. It disappeared with Sophia." His eyes, suddenly fierce, turned to Catherine. "How did this girl get it?" Catherine's facade of confusion was rapidly crumbling. "Robert, I don't know what's happening, but we should discuss this privately. Our guests—" "Answer me, Catherine." Robert's voice had turned to ice. "How does this girl have my wife's necklace?" Thomas Wells had joined them now, placing a steadying hand on Robert's shoulder. "Rob, let's take this inside," he suggested quietly. The guests were witnessing the unfolding drama with expressions ranging from shock to morbid fascination. Several had phones out, recording. Catherine's eyes darted around, assessing the situation. She straightened her shoulders and adopted a concerned expression. "Robert, I think I know what this is about. The girl who's been staying with me, Lily, she must have taken this somehow. She ran away a few days ago. I was going to tell you after the honeymoon, not wanting to cast a shadow over our wedding. I've been so worried about her." The calculated sincerity in her voice made Jessie's stomach turn. "That's a lie," Jessie exclaimed. "Lily didn't run away. She went to confront you after she found her birth certificate hidden in your study. Her real birth certificate with her real name on it. She was going to ask you directly if you had taken her from her father." Catherine's face hardened momentarily before she recovered. "This is absurd. Lily is my daughter." "He is. I adopted her legally after my sister and her husband died in a car accident." "Then where is she now?" Jessie challenged. "And why did she have this necklace?" Robert had heard enough. "Thomas, call Chief Sullivan. Catherine and I will continue this discussion inside. Ms. Parker, please make an announcement to our guests." His years of business crisis management had kicked in, allowing him to function despite the emotional earthquake happening within him. To Jessie, he said, "You're coming with us. I want to hear everything." As they moved toward the house, photographers outside the property gates captured the unexpected drama. The bride and groom leaving their own ceremony, accompanied by a disheveled teenage girl and a clearly troubled best man. Inside Robert's wood-paneled study, the confrontation continued. "Start from the beginning," Robert instructed Jesse, his voice controlled but urgent. "Everything you know about Lily Bennett." Catherine stood by the window, arms crossed defensively. Thomas positioned himself near the door, already on the phone with the police chief. "Lily and I met 2 years ago at Westport Academy," Jesse began. "I'm there on scholarship. Most of the rich kids ignored me, but Lily was different. We became friends." She glanced nervously at Catherine before continuing. "Lily always said she felt like she didn't belong in her life. She had dreams, memories she couldn't explain. When she tried to talk to Ms. Daniels about them, she was always dismissed or given medication for anxiety." Catherine made a sound of protest, but Robert silenced her with a look. "Last week," Jesse continued, "Lily was looking for her passport because Ms. Daniels had mentioned a summer trip to Europe. She found a locked box in Ms. Daniels' study instead. She opened it and found papers, her real birth certificate and newspaper clippings about a missing girl named Sophia Blackwood." Robert sank into his chair, his face ashen. "Go on," he managed. Jessie took a deep breath and continued her story as the tension in Robert's study grew palpable. "Lily told me she couldn't sleep after finding those papers. She spent the night researching online about Sophia Blackwood's disappearance. That's when she found articles with your picture." She nodded toward Robert. "She said she'd always had this feeling, like she was living someone else's life. The timeline matched, the age matched, and there was the necklace." "What necklace?" Robert asked, his voice hoarse. "Lily had a necklace she'd had for as long as she could remember. She said Ms. Daniels told her it was a family heirloom, but Lily never believed that story. When she saw photos of your wife wearing an identical necklace in the old newspaper articles." Jessie paused, her eyes flicking toward Catherine, who remained unnaturally still by the window. Lily realized it might be proof of who she really was. Catherine finally spoke, her voice controlled. "This is preposterous. Lily has always had an active imagination. She's been struggling with identity issues and fabricating stories since her early teens. I've had her in therapy for years." "Therapy to convince her she was imagining things," Jessie retorted. "She told me how you'd make her feel crazy whenever she questioned anything about her past." Robert held up his hand, silencing them both. "What happened when Lily confronted you, Catherine?" he asked, his eyes never leaving his fiancée's face. Catherine smoothed her wedding gown, buying time. "Lily came to me last week, yes. She was upset, making wild accusations. I tried to calm her down, explain that she was my niece, that I'd adopted her after my sister's accident. She was hysterical, not listening to reason. She ran off before I could fully explain. I've been trying to find her ever since." "That's not what Lily told me," Jessie said firmly. "She said she was going to ask you directly if you took her from her real father. She was terrified but determined. She gave me the necklace and note just in case something happened." She turned to Robert. "Lily never came back to our meeting spot. She's been missing for 3 days." The door opened as Chief Michael Sullivan entered, his police uniform at odds with the wedding atmosphere. A longtime friend of Robert's, Sullivan had been instrumental in the original investigation when Sophia disappeared. "Robert," he said grimly, taking in the scene, "Thomas filled me in. We need to talk." "We need to find Lily Bennett," Robert replied, "and we need to determine if she's actually my daughter." Sullivan nodded. "I've already dispatched officers to Ms. Daniels' residence with a warrant. If there's evidence there, we'll find it." He turned to Catherine. "Ma'am, I'll need you to come to the station to make a formal statement." Catherine's composure finally cracked. "This is absurd. I'm being treated like a criminal on my wedding day because of some ridiculous story from a girl from the projects." Her voice rose sharply. "Robert, surely you don't believe this fantasy?" Robert stared at her, seeing her clearly for the first time. "The necklace, Catherine. Explain the necklace." Catherine's eyes darted to the silver piece, still clutched in Robert's hand. I bought it at an estate sale years ago. Lily must have taken it from my jewelry box. It was custom made," Robert said quietly. "One of a kind. The jeweler who created it retired a decade ago. There's no possible way you bought it at an estate sale." The color drained from Catherine's face as she realized the trap she'd fallen into. Thomas, who had been quietly observing, stepped forward. "Catherine, I strongly advise you to cooperate fully. If there's been a misunderstanding, it's in your best interest to clear it up immediately." Chief Sullivan was less diplomatic. "Ms. Daniels, where is Lily Bennett right now?" Catherine's shoulders slumped slightly. When she spoke again, her voice had changed, harder, more defensive. "She's safe. She's staying with my cousin in Greenwich. I sent her there after our argument to give us both some cooling-off time." "Name and address," Sullivan demanded, notepad ready. As Catherine reluctantly provided the information, Robert struggled to process the implications. Could it really be possible? After 15 years of searching, of gradually losing hope, could Sophia have been this close all along? And if so, how had Catherine engineered such an elaborate deception? More importantly, why? Sullivan dispatched officers to the Greenwich address while Thomas stepped outside to address the waiting guests, many of whom had remained despite the abrupt halt to the ceremony. Jessie sat awkwardly in a leather armchair, suddenly aware of her role in dismantling what should have been a perfect society wedding. "Mr. Blackwood," she said hesitantly, "Lily wanted me to give you this too." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper, Lily's note. Robert took it with trembling hands and read the simple message. "If anything happens to me, find Robert Blackwood. Show him this. I think he's my real father." His eyes filled with tears. The handwriting was unfamiliar, neither childish nor adult, but that of a teenager he had never watched grow up. Yet something in the careful formation of the letters reminded him painfully of Eleanor. Catherine was escorted from the room by 2 officers, her wedding dress sweeping behind her like a deflated dream. She turned at the doorway, meeting Robert's gaze one last time. "I never meant to hurt you, Robert," she said quietly. "Everything I did was because I loved her too much to let her go." After she left, Sullivan sat heavily in the chair opposite Robert. "We'll get to the bottom of this, Rob. If Lily Bennett is Sophia, we'll confirm it with DNA testing. But I need to prepare you. It's been 15 years. Don't get your hopes too high yet." Robert nodded mechanically, still clutching the note and necklace. "I need to see her, Mike, as soon as possible." "We'll make that happen," Sullivan promised, placing a hand on his friend's shoulder. "But first, we need to locate her and ensure she's safe." 2 hours later, the wedding venue had emptied of guests, though reporters remained camped outside the gates, their numbers growing as news of the dramatic ceremony interruption spread. Thomas handled the media with practiced efficiency, releasing only a brief statement that the wedding had been postponed due to a family emergency. In the kitchen, Mrs. Hudson, the Blackwood housekeeper for over 20 years, had taken Jessie under her wing, providing the teenager with food and a sympathetic ear as they waited for news. "You were very brave to come here today," Mrs. Hudson said, pushing a plate of sandwiches toward Jessie. "Not many would have had that courage." Jessie shrugged uncomfortably. "Lily would have done the same for me. I just hope she's okay." "So do we all, dear," Mrs. Hudson replied, her eyes drifting toward the ceiling where Robert remained secluded in his study. Upstairs, Robert sat surrounded by the artifacts of his search for Sophia. Files, reports, age progression photos that had proven so heartbreakingly inaccurate if Lily Bennett was indeed his daughter. He had spent millions over the years, hired the best private investigators, followed every lead no matter how tenuous, and all along she had been just miles away, in the care of a woman he had invited into his life, his home, his heart. The betrayal was almost incomprehensible. His phone rang. "Sullivan, we've got a problem, Rob," the police chief said without preamble. "Catherine's cousin claims Lily was never sent to stay with them. They haven't seen Catherine or Lily in months." Robert's blood ran cold. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying Catherine lied. We don't know where Lily is, but officers searching Catherine's home found something concerning. There was a confrontation there recently, signs of a struggle in the study, and a small amount of blood on the carpet." "Blood?" Robert felt his world tilting. "Mike, if anything's happened to her—" "We don't know that," Sullivan interrupted firmly. "The amount was small, could be from a minor injury, but we're treating this as a potential kidnapping situation now. Catherine's been formally arrested, but she's refusing to speak further without her attorney." Robert's mind raced. "The lake house," he said suddenly. "Catherine has a family property on Lake Champlain. It's isolated, rarely used. She mentioned renovating it recently." "Address?" Sullivan asked, and Robert could hear him signaling to someone in the background. I don't know exactly. It's near Burlington, Vermont. Her family name is Preston. The property would be under that name, not Daniels. We'll find it, Sullivan assured him. Sit tight, Rob. I'll call as soon as we have something. But sitting tight was impossible. As soon as he hung up, Robert was in motion, gathering his keys and wallet. He couldn't wait in his study while others searched for the daughter he'd lost 15 years ago. Not when she might be in danger. Not when he was so close to finding her. He found Jessie and Mrs. Hudson in the kitchen. I need to go, he told them abruptly. Catherine has a lake house in Vermont. I think Lily might be there. Jessie stood immediately. I'm coming with you. Robert started to refuse, then reconsidered. If they found Sophia, Lily, she might be frightened, confused. Having a friend present could help. Fine, but you follow my instructions exactly, understood? Jessie nodded solemnly. Yes, sir. Robert, the police, Mrs. Hudson began, concerned, are doing their job, Robert finished for her. But this is my daughter we're talking about. I've missed 15 years. I'm not missing another minute. As they headed for the garage, Thomas intercepted them. Where are you going? He demanded, taking in Robert's determined expression and Jessie trailing behind him. To find my daughter, Robert replied simply. Thomas assessed the situation quickly. You're in no condition to drive. So I'm coming with you. He held out his hand for the keys, which Robert surrendered after a moment's hesitation. The Escalade has a full tank, Robert said. We can be in Vermont by nightfall. As they pulled away from the estate, reporters shouted questions and cameras flashed. None of them noticed the sleek black sedan that pulled out several car lengths behind them, following at a discreet distance. Inside that sedan, a grim-faced man in a chauffeur's uniform made a phone call. They're on the move, he reported. Heading north, just as you predicted. What do you want me to do? The response from the other end was brief, but clear. The chauffeur's expression hardened as he disconnected. Yes, Miss Daniels, I understand completely. The journey to Vermont stretched through the afternoon and into early evening, the luxury SUV eating up miles of highway as Thomas drove with steady determination. In the passenger seat, Robert alternated between tense silence and bursts of anxious questions, asking Jessie to repeat details about Lily, scrutinizing every nuance for connections to the daughter he'd lost. In the back seat, Jessie watched the landscape change from Connecticut suburbs to Massachusetts forests to Vermont mountains, a world away from her Bridgeport neighborhood. The gravity of her role in this unfolding drama weighed heavily on her young shoulders. Tell me about her, Robert said during a quiet stretch of road. What is she like? Jessie considered the question carefully. Lily is thoughtful. She notices things others don't. She's quiet at school. Most people think she's shy, but she's actually just observing everything. She loves photography, captures the most amazing details through her lens. Robert absorbed this hungrily. Photography, he repeated softly. Eleanor was the same way, always with a camera. Lily told me once that she felt most herself when looking at the world through a camera, Jessie continued, like it helped her make sense of things. Thomas glanced at Robert in the rearview mirror, seeing the emotion etched on his friend's face. Rob, I should warn you, he said gently. Even if Lily is Sophia, and the necklace certainly suggests she might be, she's grown up as someone else. She might not remember me, Robert finished. I know. I've thought of nothing else for the past 5 hours. His fingers tightened around the silver necklace in his pocket. But she's been questioning her identity, searching for answers. That has to mean something. The navigation system announced they were 30 minutes from their destination. Robert made another call to Chief Sullivan, who confirmed that local Vermont police were en route to the Preston Lake House, but hadn't arrived yet. We've had trouble pinpointing the exact location, Sullivan explained. The property records are complicated. It appears to be held in a trust. We're still working on getting a precise address. I know how to get there, Robert said. Catherine mentioned landmarks once. A covered bridge, a marina with a distinctive red boathouse. I can find it. Robert, wait for backup, Sullivan urged. We don't know what we're dealing with here. But Robert had already ended the call. Lake Champlain appeared before them as they crested a hill, its vast surface glimmering in the early evening light. Thomas slowed the vehicle, following Robert's directions as they turned onto increasingly narrow roads. There, Robert pointed suddenly, the covered bridge she mentioned. The wooden structure spanned a narrow inlet, weathered and picturesque. On the other side, the road wound through dense pine forest before emerging along the lakeshore. "The marina should be visible from here," Robert said, scanning the coastline. "There, the red boathouse." Thomas followed the shore road for another mile before Robert instructed him to turn onto an unmarked gravel driveway that disappeared into the trees. "This is it," he said with certainty. Catherine described the approach exactly once when she was talking about renovating the property. The driveway curved through thick forest for nearly half a mile before opening to reveal a substantial timber and stone house perched on a bluff overlooking the lake. A newer model Range Rover was parked in front of the three-car garage. "Someone's here," Thomas observed tensely. "Robert, perhaps we should wait for the police." But Robert was already opening his door. "My daughter might be in there," he said simply. Jessie unbuckled her seatbelt, heart pounding. "Mr. Blackwood," she said quickly, "let me go first. If Lily's here, she knows me. She'll trust me." Robert hesitated, then nodded reluctantly. "Stay behind me, though." "Both of you." They approached the house cautiously. No lights were visible from outside, though the fading daylight made it difficult to tell if the house was truly dark or just appeared so. The front door was locked. Robert moved to a large picture window, cupping his hands against the glass to peer inside. "I can't see anything," he murmured. "So let's try around back." They followed a flagstone path that curved around the side of the house to a large deck overlooking the lake. Here, a sliding glass door stood partially open, the sheer curtain inside billowing gently in the breeze. Robert exchanged glances with Thomas, who nodded grimly and removed a small canister of pepper spray from his pocket, a precaution he'd carried since an overzealous client had once threatened him. "Hello," Robert called, sliding the door open wider. "Is anyone here?" No response came from the shadowy interior. Robert stepped inside, Jessie and Thomas close behind. The great room was elegantly furnished, but showed signs of recent habitation. A half-empty water glass on the coffee table, a throw blanket rumpled on the sofa. "Lily?" Jessie called, her voice echoing slightly in the cavernous space. "It's Jessie. Are you here?" A soft thump sounded from somewhere above them. They all froze, listening intently. Another thump, followed by what might have been a muffled voice. "Upstairs," Robert whispered, already moving toward the sweeping staircase that dominated one wall of the great room. The second floor featured a long hallway with doors leading to what appeared to be bedrooms and other spaces. Most stood open, revealing unoccupied rooms. At the end of the hall, however, one door was closed. As they approached, the thumping sound came again, definitely from behind that door. "Lily?" Jessie called again, louder now. The thumping intensified. Robert tried the handle, locked. "Stand back," he instructed, before throwing his shoulder against the door. The lock held. Thomas stepped forward. "Allow me." He examined the door briefly before removing a credit card from his wallet and sliding it between the door and the jamb, manipulating it with practiced ease. The lock clicked open. Thomas raised an eyebrow at Robert's questioning look. "Misspent youth," he explained briefly. Robert pushed the door open to reveal what appeared to be a bedroom, converted to a studio space, with photography equipment scattered across tables. In the corner, a young woman sat tied to a chair, a gag across her mouth, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and hope. "Lily!" Jessie cried, rushing forward. Robert stood frozen in the doorway, staring at the girl's face. Even with the gag and the fear distorting her features, he recognized her instantly. Eleanor's cheekbones, his mother's eyes, his own determined chin, the missing piece of his heart, suddenly, impossibly before him. "Sophia," he whispered. Thomas moved quickly to untie the restraints while Jessie carefully removed the gag. The moment she was free, Lily, Sophia, threw her arms around Jessie, trembling. "You came," she sobbed. "You actually came." "Of course I did," Jessie replied, her own tears flowing freely. "I promised, didn't I?" After a moment, Lily pulled back, her gaze moving to Robert, who still stood motionless in the doorway. The two stared at each other, 15 years of separation crystallized in a single breathless moment. "Are you?" Lily began hesitantly. "Robert Blackwood." Robert nodded, unable to find words. "I think," she continued, her voice shaking, "I think you might be my father." Robert moved forward then, kneeling before her chair to meet her at eye level. Up close, the resemblance was undeniable. "I've been looking for you," he said, his voice breaking. "Every day for 15 years. Lily's hand trembled as she reached out, touching his face with wonder. "I've had dreams about you," she whispered. "A man showing me how to sail a boat, reading me stories. I always thought they were just dreams." "The Velveteen Rabbit," Robert said suddenly. "It was your favorite. I read it to you every night." Lily's eyes widened. "The stuffed rabbit becomes real because the boy loves him so much," she recited from memory. That's right." Thomas cleared his throat, bringing them back to the present danger. "We need to get out of here," he urged. "Whoever left Lily tied up could return any moment." "It was Catherine's driver," Lily explained, standing shakily. "Edwin. He brought me here 3 days ago when I confronted Catherine about who I really am." She looked at Robert. "She admitted everything. Said she'd found me wandering alone at the charity event where I disappeared. Said I looked so much like her daughter who had passed away the year before that she convinced herself it was fate." Robert's expression hardened. "So she just took you? Kept you from your family, from me?" Lily nodded, tears streaming down her face. "She said by the time she realized how wrong it was, she couldn't bear to lose me again. So she created a new identity for me, moved us to a different state, told everyone I was her niece she'd adopted after a tragedy." She shuddered. "When I found my real birth certificate hidden in her study, everything finally made sense. Why I never felt I belonged. Why she kept me so isolated. Why she was so controlling about my anxiety whenever I had memories or dreams that didn't fit her narrative." "Where is Edwin now?" Thomas asked urgently. "Catherine called him an hour ago," Lily said. "He went to meet her. I think she made bail." The implications hung heavily in the air. "We need to leave now," Robert decided, helping Lily gather a few personal belongings from the room. As they hurried down the stairs, headlights swept across the front windows. A car was coming up the driveway. "Back door," Thomas directed, guiding them through the kitchen to a rear entrance that led to a path down to the lake. Outside, they could see a boat dock with a covered slip, housing a sleek powerboat. "Can any of you operate that?" Thomas asked. Robert nodded. "I can. Let's go." They moved quickly down the path as car doors slammed at the front of the house. Voices carried through the evening air. More than one person had arrived. At the dock, Robert quickly untied the boat while Thomas helped Lily and Jessie aboard. The engine started with a reassuring purr. Just as Robert was pulling away from the dock, a figure appeared at the top of the path. Edwin, Catherine's driver, his expression murderous when he spotted them. "Stop!" he shouted, reaching inside his jacket. Thomas didn't wait to see what he might be retrieving. "Go, Robert, now!" Robert opened the throttle, the boat surging forward into the deepening twilight of the lake. Behind them, Edwin reached the dock, shouting into a phone. In the distance, they could see a police cruiser turning onto the property's driveway, lights flashing. "Perfect timing," Thomas muttered. "Just a few minutes too late." On the open water, Robert guided the boat toward the marina they'd passed earlier, maintaining a steady speed. Lily sat close beside him, unable to take her eyes off his face. "I can't believe this is real," she said softly. "That you're real." Robert glanced at her, his heart so full it threatened to burst. "I never stopped looking for you," he told her. "Never stopped believing you were out there somewhere." As the marina appeared ahead, Robert reached into his pocket and withdrew the silver necklace. "Your mother wanted you to have this when you turned 16, he said, holding it out to her. "She wore it every day until—" Lily took the necklace, tracing the pendant with trembling fingers. "I remember this," she whispered. Not clearly, but the feeling of it, the weight of it in my hand. She looked up at him, her eyes shining with tears and recognition. "I think I remember you too. Not everything, but pieces, fragments." Robert docked the boat with practiced ease as police cars gathered at the marina, Chief Sullivan having coordinated with local authorities. As they disembarked, Lily turned to Jessie. "You saved me," she said simply, embracing her friend. "Both times. When you befriended the weird new girl at school and again today." Jessie smiled through her tears. "That's what friends do." As police officers approached to take their statements, Robert stood slightly apart, watching his daughter, his miracle, speaking animatedly with her friend. Thomas joined him, placing a hand on his shoulder. "It's really her, isn't it?" he asked quietly. Robert nodded, unable to speak past the emotion clogging his throat. After 15 years of searching, of hoping against hope, his daughter had returned to him, not through his exhaustive efforts or expensive investigators, but through the courage of a teenager from Bridgeport who refused to let her friend disappear. "What happens now?" Thomas asked. Robert took a deep breath, watching as Sophia, now Lily, glanced over at him with a tentative smile. "Now," he said, "we begin again." 3 months later, the Blackwood estate buzzed with activity once again, though this gathering was markedly different from the ill-fated wedding. Instead of champagne and orchestral music, the gardens featured lemonade stands and a local jazz band. Instead of society's elite in formal attire, a diverse crowd mingled in casual summer clothes. Teenagers from Westport Academy, alongside families from Bridgeport, business associates chatting with social workers and police officers. At the center of it all was Lily Blackwood, officially reclaiming her birth name of Sophia, though she still answered to both, moving comfortably among the guests, her camera in hand as she documented the day. The DNA tests had confirmed what Robert knew in his heart the moment he saw her. This was indeed his daughter, missing for 15 years, now returned. The legal proceedings against Catherine Daniels were ongoing, though she had agreed to a plea arrangement that acknowledged her mental health struggles following her own daughter's tragic passing. Edwin faced more serious charges for his role in restraining Lily at the lake house. The story had captivated the nation, even making international headlines. Robert had protected Lily from the media frenzy as much as possible, declining all interview requests and issuing only brief statements through Thomas. Today's gathering was his way of thanking everyone who had played a role in bringing his daughter home, while also launching the Sophia Foundation, a new organization dedicated to finding missing children and supporting families torn apart by such tragedies. "You've outdone yourself," Thomas commented, joining Robert on the terrace overlooking the festivities. "Not bad for 3 months planning." Robert smiled, his eyes never leaving Lily as she photographed a group of laughing children by the fountain. "She wanted it this way," he said. "No exclusivity, no VIP section, just people coming together to celebrate and support a good cause." Thomas nodded approvingly. "She's remarkable, Rob. The resilience she's shown through all of this, she gets that from her mother," Robert said softly. Across the lawn, Jessie Torres was helping younger children with an art project, her grandmother watching proudly from a nearby bench. The Torres family had become fixtures at the Blackwood home since the events at Lake Champlain. Robert had insisted on providing a full scholarship for Jessie to continue at Westport Academy through graduation, with a guaranteed college fund waiting afterward. Mrs. Torres had initially resisted, proud and independent, but Robert had been persuasive. "Your granddaughter brought my daughter back to me," he told her simply. "There's nothing I could ever do that would fully repay that debt." Chief Sullivan approached, looking relaxed in casual clothes rather than his uniform. "Quite a turnout," he observed. "Half my department is here." "And they're all welcome," Robert replied warmly. "How's the investigation going?" Sullivan's expression turned more serious. "Wrapping up, finally. Catherine's medical records confirm her psychological break after her daughter's passing. The therapists believe she genuinely convinced herself that taking Sophia was somehow meant to be a cosmic correction of her loss." He shook his head. "Doesn't excuse it, of course, but helps explain it." "And the charity event?" Robert asked. "How did she get to Sophia in the first place?" This had been the question that haunted him most, how his daughter had vanished under the supposedly watchful eyes of event security. "Catherine was a volunteer coordinator that day," Sullivan explained. "She had access to all areas, including the children's play space. According to her statement, she found Sophia wandering alone near the service entrance. Instead of taking her to security, she just took her." Robert's jaw tightened. "All these years, I imagined some elaborate abduction, and it was that simple." "The simplest explanations often are the right ones," Sullivan said gently. "She took advantage of a moment of confusion, and by the time anyone realized Sophia was missing, Catherine had already left with her." A burst of laughter drew their attention to the fountain, where Lily was showing a group of teenagers how to use her camera. Her smile, so like Eleanor's, sent a wave of gratitude through Robert. Whatever had happened, however it had happened, his daughter was home. The adjustment hadn't been easy. Lily had spent 15 formative years as someone else, with different memories, different experiences. The first weeks had been awkward, tentative, as father and daughter relearned each other. Lily had insisted on continuing therapy, working through her conflicted feelings about Catherine, the woman who had raised her with genuine love, however misguided the circumstances. "I can't just hate her," Lily had explained to Robert one evening. What she did was wrong, terribly, unforgivably wrong, but she was also the only mother I knew for 15 years. I'm allowed to have complicated feelings about that. Robert had marveled at her emotional maturity, so beyond her years. "Yes," he'd agreed, "you're allowed to feel however you feel." Now, watching her navigate the gathering with quiet confidence, Robert saw glimpses of both the child he'd lost and the young woman she'd become. Both were precious to him. Mrs. Hudson appeared at his elbow with a tray of refreshments. "You should eat something," she chided gently. "You've been so busy playing host you've hardly had a bite." Robert accepted a sandwich with a grateful smile. "What would I do without you, Mrs. H?" "Starve, most likely," she replied with fond exasperation. "Sophia asked me to tell you she wants to make the announcement in about 15 minutes. Robert checked his watch and nodded. "I'll be ready." The announcement was Lily's idea, a surprise element to the foundation launch that she'd been planning for weeks. She'd shared the concept with Robert, who had immediately approved and offered whatever resources she needed. Now, as guests began gravitating toward the temporary stage set up on the lawn, Robert felt a surge of pride. At the appointed time, Lily stepped up to the microphone, her camera hanging around her neck like a talisman. The crowd quieted. "Thank you all for coming today," she began, her voice clear and steady. "I'm still getting used to being Sophia again after 15 years as Lily, so if I respond to either name, please bear with me." A ripple of understanding laughter moved through the audience. The Sophia Foundation officially launches today with a mission to help find missing children and reunite families. But I wanted to add something personal to this launch. She took a deep breath. "When I was taken, I essentially disappeared from the system. No school records, no medical records under my real name. I became invisible, which made finding me nearly impossible." She gestured to a large screen behind her. "Today, I'm unveiling the Visible Project, a photography initiative that will work with at-risk youth to document their lives, their communities, and their stories. Because being seen, truly seen, is the first step to not being forgotten." The screen lit up with photographs, powerful, evocative images of young people from diverse backgrounds, each captioned with not just a name, but a story, a dream, an aspiration. "These are just the beginning," Lily continued. "With the Foundation's support, we'll be establishing photography workshops in communities across the country, providing cameras, instruction, and exhibition opportunities to young people who often feel invisible to the broader world." The crowd erupted in applause. Robert felt tears prick his eyes as Jessie joined Lily on stage, followed by several other teenagers, the first participants in the Visible Project. Pride swelled in his chest as Lily continued explaining her vision with passion and clarity. When the presentation concluded, guests pressed forward to offer congratulations and support. Robert remained on the terrace, giving Lily her moment to shine. Thomas rejoined him, looking impressed. "She's definitely your daughter," he observed. "That same quiet determination to change things for the better." Robert nodded, too moved to speak immediately. Finally, he said, "She's been through so much, Tom. She could be angry, bitter, withdrawn. Instead, she's channeling it all into helping others." "Like father, like daughter," Thomas replied simply. As the afternoon progressed into evening, the gathering became more intimate as casual visitors departed, leaving the core group of family and close friends. Lanterns illuminated the garden paths, and the jazz band played softer melodies. Lily found Robert sitting alone by the rose garden that had been Eleanor's pride and joy. "Mind if I join you?" she asked, slipping into the seat beside him. "I've been hoping you would," he replied with a smile. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, listening to the distant music and conversation. "I think Mom would have liked today," Lily said suddenly. Robert glanced at her, surprised. Lily rarely mentioned Eleanor, still struggling to connect with memories of a mother she'd lost at such a young age. "She would have loved it," he agreed softly. "Especially your photography project. She always had a camera in her hand too." Lily fingered the silver necklace she now wore daily. "I've been having more memories," she confessed, Little flashes. The three of us on the boat. Mom teaching me to make cookies. You reading me stories. She hesitated. Are they real memories, do you think? Or am I just recreating scenes from the photos and stories you've shared? Robert considered this thoughtfully. Perhaps a bit of both, he said. Memory is a strange thing, especially early childhood memory. But I like to think that love leaves an imprint that can't be completely erased even by time and circumstance. Lily leaned her head against his shoulder, a gesture that had become more natural over the past months. I'm glad I found my way back, she whispered. Me too, sweetheart, Robert replied, his arm around her shoulders. More than you could ever know. From across the garden, Jessie watched the father-daughter moment with a smile. Her own life had transformed dramatically since that fateful day she'd crashed a millionaire's wedding. Beyond the educational opportunities Robert had insisted on providing, she'd found a second home at the Blackwood estate, a place where her voice was valued and her potential recognized. Quite a view, isn't it? Mrs. Hudson said, joining her with a plate of desserts. Better than any television drama, Jessie laughed. No one would believe it if it was a TV show, too far-fetched. Mrs. Hudson's eyes twinkled. Truth is always stranger than fiction, my dear. Later, as stars appeared above the Blackwood estate, guests gathered for one final surprise. A lantern release in honor of all missing children still waiting to be found. Robert, Lily, and Jessie stood together, each holding a paper lantern with a small light inside. Make a wish, Lily suggested as they prepared to release them into the night sky. Robert didn't need to think about his wish. It had already come true. His daughter was home. As the lanterns drifted upward, joining dozens of others to create a constellation of hope against the darkness, he thought about the journey that had brought them here. 15 years of searching, of never giving up hope. A brave teenager from Bridgeport who risked everything to speak truth to power. A young woman reclaiming her identity and transforming her trauma into purpose. And now, a new beginning for all of them. The foundation would ensure that other families might find the same resolution, that other children would not remain invisible. As the last lantern disappeared into the night sky, Lily turned to her father with clear eyes and a determined smile. This is just the beginning, she said. Robert nodded, knowing she was right. After 15 years of endings, of closed doors and dead ends, they had finally found their way to a new beginning, together. Yes, he agreed, embracing his daughter, as Jessie looked on with a smile. This is just the beginning. The lanterns glowed like distant stars above them, each one carrying a message of hope into the vast night, that the lost could be found, that broken things could be mended, and that sometimes the truth arrives through the most unlikely voice, and when it does, it changes everything.